They were running around doing whatever. I don't know what they were doing. But they used DC. They're they're talking about federalizing DC. And I broke this down a few weeks ago, talking about, well, a week ago, talking about how they're going to use tough on black crime as an excuse to federalize Washington, D.C. So there's another incident that's going on there now. Some cats out there wilding, most likely immigrants, running around wilding in D.C. I don't know all the particulars of it. It's inconsequential. It's consequential but inconsequential because they're going to do what they want to do anyway, the white supremacists. But a week or so ago, when there was an incident where this employee who worked for Doge, he allegedly got jumped. This white boy who got jumped by a bunch of black youths. Well, the white media really ran with this narrative, oh, black culture, black culture, black culture. And then they got all of their bootlicks to follow the same talking point. Case in point, this C.J. Pearson dude. Now, this is a right-wing Sambo. And he says, and in his job, he basically does this whole Sambo for pay nonsense. He's been doing this forever. He's a young dude. And he's little, from what I understand. When I read some information, they said the dude was he's 4'11". Is he really 4'11"? That's a little bitty Sambo. They said C.J. Pearson is 4'11". Wow. That's what the Wikipedia says, but Wikipedia, you take it with a grain of salt. But he said, I'm not going to mince words. I'm not going to be politically correct. The fatherlessness crisis in the black community is one of the primary factors fueling the wave of violence in D.C. We can't solve this issue without addressing that. Okay? So that's one of those talking points that comes from the white supremacist think tank. Candace Owens, she likes to push that line. They get a lot of their bootlicks to push that line. A lot of the white supremacists push that line. The problem in the black community, it's not white supremacy. Oh, no, no, no. White supremacy is a myth. White supremacy has been over with for so long. Everything is equal now, so it's not white supremacy. All the problems that black people face culturally, it's the lack of fathers. So it's those hood rat black women having babies out of wedlock, and that's causing all the problems. That's the propaganda that they've been pushing really since the 60s. They started that in the 60s. Yeah? And understand that absent black father lie, that has always been a propaganda tool. The white supremacists, they like to push that stereotype like it's gospel. Even the CDC, their own stats proved otherwise. They said black fathers, even the ones that are not living in the home, are more hands-on with their kids than fathers of other races. They said they read with their kids, help with the homework, bathe them, have a higher daily engagement with the children. And that whole absent black dad thing, that's propaganda. It's designed to make black men look inherently irresponsible and degenerate. Okay? And we've discussed this before. In the whole single-parent household, that's the statistical trick. When the census calls a home single-parent, let's be clear, that doesn't mean the father is absent. It doesn't count if the dad is nearby or if the dad co-parents. And if people get divorces, people get separated or whatever, that doesn't mean that the father is not still active in the life of the child. You understand? So that erases the whole extended family network that a lot of foundational black Americans have relied on for generations. So that stat is really cooked up to inflate the whole fatherless number. So the dominant society can push that whole moral deficiency narrative. And listen, father removal, that's a state policy. That's not black culture. Like mass incarceration, targeted policing, bogus child support enforcement. These are designed to physically remove black men from homes, locking brothers up for petty charges, giving them a record that keeps them jobless, then turn around and use the so-called absence as proof of cultural failure. See, that's a deliberate loop. That's not an accident. So we got to understand where this stuff is coming from and why it's out there. Economics, ladies and gentlemen, drives marriage rates, not morals. When an economy is gutted, ladies and gentlemen, factories close down, jobs vanish, marriage rates drop in every community. White society, they lost factory jobs too, and marriages dipped for them too. When y'all start losing jobs in the white community, your marriages drop too. But when it happens to black people, all of a sudden it's a cultural thing, it's a moral thing. And basically, that's just a code for them ignoring the economic sabotage that they commit in black neighborhoods, in black areas. We are deliberately sabotaged. Let's just be very, very realistic. And let's be honest, when we look at the crime rates, that crime rates don't really match the fatherless story. If fatherlessness was the magic cause of crime, then the crime rate would rise and fall with the numbers of single-parent homes. It doesn't. Crime actually dropped dramatically in the 90s and 2000s, while single-parent homes, quote-unquote, stayed high. So that killed the whole cause and effect argument. But that myth persists because it's politically useful. You understand? It's still a very politically useful myth. Y'all give me a retweet. Let's get about 6,000, 7,000 people in here. We need to get folks up in here. Let folks know that I'm live. And listen, the U.S., man, has the highest single-parent rate all across the board. This is a national issue. See, America, they have more single-parent homes than any other industrialized nation anywhere, across all races. And, you know, it's because of the weak social safety nets and expensive housing and low wages. These are problems that hurt everybody. But black people get singled out as if we invented the whole phenomenon. So that selective targeting is basically anti-black racism. Yeah? And going back to the 60s, again, this whole myth started in the 60s with the Moynihan report. The Moynihan report in the 60s, it was a blueprint for basically blaming black families. See, that whole fatherlessness caused dysfunction thing, that came out in 1965 in the Moynihan report. I want y'all to understand, keep in mind, starting in 65, the propaganda we started to see as it related to black families. See, in 65, that Moynihan report came out and it shifted the conversation from systematic racism to family pathology. So that gave white policymakers an excuse to ignore the civil rights demands. Because look, in 65, we were demanding tangible civil rights, jobs, fair housing. We were making some tangible demands. So instead of doing everything they were supposed to do, they gave a little, but instead of doing everything they're supposed to do, they started to shift narratives into, well, the black people are their own problem. They started moralizing black people. So that report is still that's still the blueprint for the anti-black social policies of today. So that whole lie basically justified punitive welfare and policing. See, when they can paint black families as broken, they can justify cutting welfare, adding work requirements, policing our neighborhoods more aggressively, locking up more black men for the sake of the children. So all of these backdoor little janky movements to expand surveillance and punishment under the guise of helping us. And the real purpose was really to protect white supremacy. Blaming fatherlessness, see, that takes the heat off the real culprits. The white supremacists, racist housing policies, racist job discrimination, underfunded schools based on racism, the creation of the industrial prison complex. See, all of that shifts focus from what the white supremacy and the white supremacist due to the black community. You understand? So they say, oh, it's the blacks doing it to themselves. You know? See, white supremacy, one of the main rules of white supremacy is to be in perpetual denial. That's why y'all see when I do debates on my Twitter spaces, boy, the white supremacists, they blame everything. They don't take responsibility for nothing. Everything is everybody else's fault. The white supremacists run everything, but it's everybody else's fault. Oh, the Africans, it was an African chief who sold you to me. The African chief made me do it, a mythological African chief. Oh, it was the Jews who made us do it. It was the Jews who was running the slave trade. They're the ones. It was the Jews who created Jim Crow. It's the Illuminati that had housing discrimination. It was the Bilderbergs and the Rothschilds. Listen, when you acknowledge, I'm talking about the dominant society. When you acknowledge white supremacy, you expose the entire power structure. See, if white supremacy is openly acknowledged, it forces society to basically admit that the economic, political, and social systems worldwide are built on the exploitation of non-white people, particularly black people. And that would make the entire system illegitimate in the eyes of the world. So denial protects the foundation of white supremacy. Denial shifts focus onto the victims. See, when you deny systematic white supremacy, you automatically create a space to blame black people for their own problem. Bad choices, culture, fatherlessness, not working hard enough. See, that flips the role. See, that makes the oppressor look innocent and the victims look defective. And also, if you admit to white supremacy, that creates legal and financial liability. See, if white supremacy is acknowledged, that opens the door for reparations, lawsuits, global accountability. So denial, that's a form of self-protection for the dominant society. Admission equals debt. Debt means paying back what was stolen. That's why everything is all about denial, denial, denial. See, denial keeps the white supremacist brand clean to them. See, the white supremacists, they thrive on branding itself as fair, democratic, and moral. Even if they admit that the system is inherently racist, it destroys that whole land of the free sales pitch to the world. So denial allows America to market itself as the beacon of freedom while they practice racial domination at home. And also, it protects white unity. See, when you acknowledge white supremacy, that could cause division among white people. Because, see, that will force a conversation about who benefits from it and who should give something up. So, denial maintains a racial solidarity pact. While white people might disagree on politics, but they unite when it's all about pretending systematic racism isn't the root cause of inequality. They get on code for that. And also, listen, man, denial, that allows them to practice white supremacy and continue it under new names. See, if white supremacy is never named, it evolves and it rebrands. You notice that? So slavery becomes sharecropping, all right? Jim Crow becomes tough on crime policies. Redlining, it becomes urban renewal, yeah? So you deny the system, you can keep the whole exploitation going without being called out for it. See, that's why they hate folks like me who always use the term white supremacy. All of it is white supremacy. Jim Crow, white supremacy. Slavery, white supremacy. Segregation is white supremacy. Let's be real. That's what it is. Segregation is white supremacy. We weren't segregated. The white people weren't segregated. I want you to think about that. Think about segregation when they say you're segregation. White people weren't really segregated. White people, they weren't being held back from any place. They weren't told they couldn't go nowhere. We are told to this day, certain neighborhoods we go in now and they run up on us and we got to check people about stuff like that. Even to this day. Especially during Jim Crow, this was especially so. They would tell us we couldn't live in certain neighborhoods, we couldn't drink out of certain water fountains, we couldn't walk in certain doors, we couldn't go to certain movie theaters. We were discriminated against. We were segregated. White people could go anywhere they wanted to go. Let's be clear. White people would go to black neighborhoods all the time. White people stayed in black neighborhoods. They going to the juke joints, going to the food places, going to the Negro League baseball games. White people could go anywhere they wanted to go. They weren't segregated. See, they try to say segregation as if there were some type of equal discrimination. It never was. Yeah, they had sundown towns. It still got sundown towns. I always point out the Rosa Parks situation. The Rosa Parks situation, people get it confused. They think that Rosa Parks was trying to sit in the white section of the bus. No, she wasn't. Rosa Parks was already sitting in the colored section. Do y'all understand that? Rosa Parks was already sitting in the colored section. The policy was if the white section got too full, black people had to get the hell up out of the colored section too to let a white person sit down. That's what that case was about. You understand? They were already in the colored section. And white man was like, hey, ain't no seats up there. You got to get up. I want to sit in the colored section. That's why she went to jail. You see? There was never equal segregation. It's just white supremacy. You see? And see, when you acknowledge white supremacy, that disarms counter-racism movement. See, if you can convince the world that white supremacy doesn't exist, any movement against it looks paranoid, it looks divisive, it looks extremist. So denial weakens resistance because it forces the victims to prove there's a problem before they can even address it. So that gives the oppressor a built-in head start. You see? That's why I'm very particular about calling out white supremacy. Because the white supremacists, they like to say, oh my God, you guys hate white people. Oh, you hate us for our color. You're no better than Bull Connor. You're no better. No. We have no problem with white people. The problem is systematic white supremacy. That is the problem. So you got to understand the rules of white supremacy. The main rules are deny white supremacy exists at all costs, act like white supremacy is the thing of the past, or act like it's a few isolated incidents. Oh, it's Richard Spencer. Oh, it's Nick Fuentes. That's white supremacy. No. It's a whole system. No. They try to focus on individual racism instead of a whole entire power structure. See, that makes systematic racism invisible and unaccountable. And also, you never blame the system. You always blame the victim. If a black community is struggling, the narrative is, it's not racism, it's bad choices, lack of work ethic, broken culture, no fathers. So you flip the script so that white supremacy looks innocent and the victims look self-destructive. And the goal is to keep systematic racism off the hook. And also, you maintain power through controlled diversity. See, if you sprinkle just enough diversity in the media and in business to make it look inclusive, but never enough to threaten white dominance, see, that's controlled representation, and it works as camouflage to hide the deeper racial hierarchy. This is why they'll go get some East Indians who hate black people too and say, hey, look at this dark non-white person. They'll go get Vivek and look, diversity. We're not racist. We got Vivek. Vivek is more anti-black than you. You understand? So that's a little trick they play. You know? So you got to be careful when you start asking for diversity. So when you start saying, hey, we need some black representation. Okay, come on over here, Candace Owens. There you go. but she hates black people. Well, you wanted black representation. I mean, damn, come on, guys. I'm not going to police her views. If we say, hey, they always play little trick bags on us. If we say, hey, man, there's a lot of white models here, we on Vogue magazine and all of this stuff, why don't we get some black models and some black women representation on the magazines? Oh, you want some black models? Okay. Come here, Gabby Sidibe. We're going to put Gabby Sidibe on the cover. Oh, no. We're going to embrace all body types, and we're going to let Gabby Sidibe be the face of it. You want a diversity, right? So it's always some little trick bag that they have, that they maintain white supremacy while nudging each other. You see? So the thing is, we better understand how this game works and understand where it started, the whole fatherless thing, going back to the whole fatherlessness nonsense and where that came from, and again, how it started in the 1960s. Like I said, that narrative started with the Moynihan Report. Yeah? And then we started to see it on all of the TV shows starting in the 60s. You see? We started to see that on all the television shows. And the reason why they had to change the narrative, see, they had to reframe civil rights into a black problem. See, after the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, there was a conversation shifting towards systematic repair, jobs, housing, reparations. So they had to start flooding the media with broken black family imagery. So they had to redirect focus away from dismantling white supremacy towards fixing black people themselves. So we started to see a lot of propaganda in the 60s. We started to see this whole thing where after the Moynihan Report, the whole breakdown of the Negro family, Hollywood became a propaganda arm to prove Moynihan's theory visually by giving the public the impression that single black motherhood was the default reality. I want to get deep for a minute. I want y'all to follow me. So they had to make black men look irresponsible and non-essential. So they had to start showing generation after generation of fatherless TV families that planted the idea that black men were either absent, dead, or in prison, pretty much making them seem unnecessary as providers and leaders in their community. And that made it easier to justify excluding them from jobs, leadership, and political influence. And that was also designed to make the reinforcement of gender divides within the black community even stronger. Them constantly portraying black mothers as the sole parent and fathers as absent. That was a way to pit black women and black men against each other to fuel mistrust, resentment, and division. And they wanted to weaken collective unity that could have been used against systematic oppression. See, when black men and black women are here, we're unstoppable. We are a force to reckon with. When black men and black women are on the same page, that's a problem to the white supremacists. You understand? They had to undermine that image of the strong black patriarch. See, during slavery, Reconstruction, the Civil Rights era, black men who were strong family leaders, they were a direct threat to white dominance. So they had to erase them from popular imagery. So Hollywood weakened that whole perception of black male authority in the public mind. So what did we start seeing in the 60s, family? Look at the stuff we start seeing in the 60s, in around 1968. And I talked about this before. There was a show with Diane Carroll called Julia. That was the first time they had a black female lead in a primetime sitcom. The character was a widowed single mother raising her son alone. So the dad was conveniently dead. So that allowed Hollywood to present a respectable single mother without challenging the absentee black father trope. You see? So now this single black mother with a dead husband is making it on her own. And then other shows started to follow. There was a movie with Diane Carroll, early 70s, called Claudine. She was another black single mother with multiple children, and she was in a relationship with a garbage collector, and it highlighted welfare policies that punish marriage and reinforced that whole black mother raising kids without a solid black father trope. We start to see a lot of this weird stuff. There was another movie in early 70s. Some of y'all might remember, some of the cats who were a little older. There's a movie with Cicely Tyson called Sounder. It was a movie set in the Great Depression South that followed a black sharecropper family after the father is sent to prison. I remember that movie as a kid. So the father's and he's gone due to incarceration. So the emotional weight is placed on the black mother and her resilience. So again, you had to center the strong single mother having to hold the family together. How many of y'all remember Sounder, that movie? The dog's name was Sounder. They had a dog. Oh yeah, thank you for the super chats, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the super chats. But it goes deeper. It goes deeper, ladies and gentlemen. There was a show in 1974 called That's My Mama. It was a sitcom on a black man raised by his mother in Washington, D.C., no father present. Yeah? How many of y'all remember That's My Mama? Then you had Good Times. Now, Good Times is heavy. Good Times, they always wanted Florida Evans to be a single mother. Florida Evans, her character came from a TV show called Maude. She was a maid on the show Maude. Right, the dad stole some meat in Sounder. Y'all remember? Yeah, Kevin Hooks played in that movie. Right, it was that movie made me so sad growing up. Oh, that movie made me so sad growing up. I remember seeing it as a kid. It made me very sad. But yeah, That's My Mama. Yeah, a big, sassy, single mother. Good Times. They wanted Florida Evans to be a single mother. Esther Roll said, no, I don't want to do that. Esther Roll said, no. That's not a good look. I want y'all to understand, a lot of black people who were actors back in those days, they saw what was going on and what Hollywood was doing. They saw what Hollywood was doing and they were pushing back against it. They were saying, no. Esther Roll said, no. If you want me to have a sitcom, you got to give me a black father in there. We have to have a family. We got to have a family. Then they got John Amos to play James Evans. The best seasons of Good Times is when James Evans was on there. That was the best seasons. Later on, because they didn't like that imagery of a strong black father, and plus Esther Roll and John Amos, they would let the producers know some of this stuff y'all got with JJ, it's a little buffoonish. We don't want to have that look for black children. We got our teenage son who's a big dummy doing bad in school. Y'all really putting a lot of emphasis on JJ. That's why Jimmy Walker, he had beef with Esther Roll and John Amos. He didn't fuck with them and they didn't fuck with him. They had beef behind the scenes. You see? And they ended up killing the James Evans character off. They killed him off. That's when Good Times started to go downhill. It started to low-key go downhill from there. Yeah, the episodes with James, the best episodes. The absolute best episodes. So they made her a single mother anyway. Listen, even on the show What's Happening, how many of y'all remember What's Happening? What's Happening, great shows. It was loosely based on the movie Cooley High. Our brother Eric Monte, who was a phenomenal writer, he wrote on a lot of those black sitcoms. I think, well, definitely he wrote on Good Times. I think he wrote on The Jeffersons and some more. What's Happening was loosely based on the film Cooley High. What's Happening was the first time a sitcom television show was centered around black teenagers. You understand? And that show was a phenomenal show. It was a smash hit show because it showed black teenagers for real. It didn't show us all dysfunctional. It showed black teens like black teens were. fun, happy, going through relationship issues, smart. You understand? Yeah, the What's Happening was set out in L.A. Yes, they were. Yeah, they filmed it out here in L.A. Right, James Evan was killed going to Mississippi for a job. It was just a real janky ass, that killed the spirit of a lot of people too. But going back to Good Time, but What's Happening. So What's Happening again? And y'all need to go look at reruns of What's Happening. By the way, it's a phenomenal show, man. Very funny show, especially the first and second season. Now the character Roger and Dee, Roger was a teen. He was like 16, 17 on the show. In real life, they were in their mid-20s. The only person who was really a teen was the brother Haywood Nelson, who played Dwayne. He was actually like 16 and 17 for real. But Rerun and Ernest Thomas, they were in their mid-20s at the time. Yeah? But they did a phenomenal job. They did a phenomenal job. But the Ernest Thomas character, Roger and Dee, played by Daniel Spencer, she was the little shit-talking sister. Dee she talked cash shit on the show. Yeah, Dee was dry snitching. Oh, Dee was a hater. Yeah, Dee was a hater. I don't know why they told Dee anything. Dee would tell everybody secrets. I'm like, why are y'all saying anything around Dee? You know Dee is going to tell on you. But nevertheless, the mother, Roger's mother, because the show was centered around Roger's family, his mother and his sister. Mabel King played the mother. Phenomenal actress. Mabel King, she would complain behind the scenes about what's happening. She wanted to have a black family together too, because they had Dee and Roger's dad play bit parts. He would come and play bit parts on the show. He would come and go. Mabel King told the producer, she was like, no, you know what? We need to have the father permanently on the show. We need to have that father on there because it would be more impactful to the audience to see a strong black family. She even protested and went on strike for the show on a couple of episodes. There were a couple of episodes where she actually went on strike because she didn't like the way the script was going. She didn't like the whole single mother thing. She said, Miss Mabel King, God bless and rest her soul, because she died of diabetes, I think, in the 90s. So they say Mabel was King, friends to your aunt. Okay. But yeah, even she was complaining about the whole single parent thing, saying that, yeah, they made her a divorcee. And they would say, hey, no, we gotta, it'll be better to have the family unit there. That'll be a better look. They're like, oh, no. Those Hollywood producers, they were hell-bent on that black dysfunction trope. That black family dysfunction, that irresponsible black man trope. The black man ain't there. You see? So that was a big thing going into the 70s. So that was the dominant society. That was their attempt to kind of present black dysfunction as self-inflicted and not systematic. See, if the public believes that black communities are suffering because of fatherlessness, then systematic racism and economic exclusion and redlining and mass incarceration, all of that fades into the background. Then the problem becomes their culture and not their system. You see? So also what they needed to do, having that broken family, absent black father trope, that provided a moral justification for disinvestment. So why invest in housing and schools and in business development in black areas if they're broken and they can't even keep their families together? So why should we invest in this and that? So that gave cover for a lot of cities to really neglect a lot of the infrastructure, defund a lot of black communities while blaming the people. They defunded a lot of music programs and things like that. Well, why should we teach these Negroes music? Well, that's where hip-hop came out of. Hip-hop came out of the defunding of music programs. So they're like, yeah, we'll just do music. Let's get our parents' turntables and scratch them breaks and we'll rap and sing over that. Yeah? So we got to understand how they needed to exploit that stereotype globally. See, in the 70s, that was the rise of a lot of U.S. television and film exports. You know, the motion picture industry really got back on its feet in the 70s, really because the blaxploitation movies, and I've talked about that before, the blaxploitation movies saved the Hollywood system. Because after the 1968 Housing Act, the Fair Housing, white people started to just vacate out of out of urban areas, and they became black areas, but they start taking the resources and the tax dollars and running out to the suburbs. So that left a lot of these movie theaters empty. A lot of white folks were not going to these urban movie theaters because they moved out. They didn't have the suburban metroplexes and all of that yet. So the only thing that kept the movie theaters afloat in the early 70s, really, that really kept them afloat were the blaxploitation movies. We started to go to those movie theaters. We would sit up in the movie theaters, and I was a kid. Man, I would watch them triple features. We'd go watch them blaxploitation films, those kung fu films. So that kept these theaters afloat. That kept the Hollywood system afloat. Movies like Shaft, Superfly, The Mac, all of that stuff. So they used those funds to reinvest in movies like Jaws and Star Wars and Close Encounters. You see? Yeah, Dolomite. Y'all got to understand, those were huge movies back then. You look at them now, they look cheesy, but those movies were huge back then. They made a lot of money. Yeah? No. You say, do I think it harmed the community? No. No, I don't. But the thing is, like I said, they started to export a lot of these single parent tropes, and they pushed that trope into the global media. So the white supremacists, they could control the images of black people worldwide, basically presenting us as inherently unstable and in need of white intervention. You see? So that's why even to this day, if there's not a white savior somewhere, they don't like rocking with it. Anything black that does not have a white savior, they have a problem with it. Just like I was talking about the other day, I was talking about our good brother Shedeur Sanders. His rise to the NFL, there was no white savior in that. That's why they have a problem with them. You see, they like for us to have a white savior. Shedeur went to an HBCU initially. His dad was his coach. Came from an affluent black family. Yeah. There was no white agent that came and saved him. No white benefactor that came and saved him. No white sports agent or coach, or no white school that came and saved him. He rose up through the ranks and he became great because of black society. Just like LeVar Ball as well. Same thing. LeVar Ball, they had a problem with him. They don't like them black fathers. Yeah, whenever there's a black father stepping up, making things happen, making their children great, they have a problem with it. And let me tell you something. You want to talk about how great black fathers are. Look at a lot of black people who are great. Especially, let's look at our athletes who have the black fathers around showing them the game. Kobe Bryant, his dad, Kyrie Irving, so many. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. Y'all remember seeing Tiger Woods with his dad teaching him golf? It was his dad. Venus and Serena Williams. Yeah. You see? Yeah, now going back to remember, black people in these shows going back to the 70s, they would show black people dysfunctional, and the black family was inherently broken, and these black single mothers, the black fathers were gone, and all these children are doomed to poverty. And what did they do on the flip side?